today across Canada. Of course, it was the second day of the election campaign, the first full day if you want to get technical. And of course, the left just can't leave things alone. They just went crazy. Welcome to my channel, y'all. I hope you're having a great day. Well, I'm going to switch things up a little bit during the election campaign. I'm going to actually talk about multiple topics during one video. Well, of course, you could say that I'm only talking about the election, but I'm going to talk about multiple things regarding the election. In this first video, I'm going to talk about a couple of things. First, I'm going to talk about election interference and how the left is blowing something Danelle Smith said way out of proportion and trying to blame her for getting involved in federal election interference, which I think is quite stupid. The other thing I want to talk about are the debates, where they are, when they're going to happen, and why Quebec thinks that they deserve more than one French debate, even though they don't even have a quarter of our population. Let's get into this. Right now, I want to start off with a CBC report accusing Danelle Smith of encouraging election interference by Donald Trump. Let's go to that report now, and then we'll talk about it.
Premier Danelle Smith, she is denying that she urged the U.S. government to interfere in the Canadian federal election. This weekend, an interview she did with Breitbart, which is a right-wing U.S. media company, drew some attention. So take a listen to what the Premier of Alberta said when asked if Canadians are likely to vote Conservative.
Before the tariff war, I would say yes. I mean, Pierre Poilievre is the name of the Conservative Party leader, and he was miles ahead of Justin Trudeau. But because of the what we see as unjust and unfair tariffs, it's actually caused an increase in the support for the Liberals. And so that's what I fear, is that the longer this dispute goes on, politicians posture, and it seems to be benefiting the Liberals right now. So I would hope that we could put things on pause, is what I've told administration officials. Let's just put things on pause so we can get through an election. Let's have the best person at the table make the argument for how they would deal with it, and I think that's Pierre Poilievre.
So is what she said election interference? I don't really think so. If anything, it's an encouragement to the Trump administration to stop election interference, if that's what it is that they're doing, which I don't really think it is. He's stating an opinion, and yes, he's being very Trumpish about it. He's being very almost over the top, but that's who he is. He's not doing anything nefarious. He's not interfering in anything that's going on as far as lying or, doing something underhanded and dirty under the table. He's being forthright and stating his opinion. So I don't think that's election interference. And I certainly don't think that Danelle Smith saying, hey, that's hurting the chances of the Conservatives, and the Conservatives are probably going to be a lot easier for you to deal with than the Liberals, which is her opinion. It's not Donald Trump's opinion, but in her opinion, it's probably that she thinks that Donald Trump would be better off dealing with the Conservatives. So she's encouraging them to maybe cool down their rhetoric. I don't think that's an encouragement of election interference either. If anything, it's an encouragement to stop election interference.
Okay, so as I said, Smith is denying accusations as she asked the U.S. administration to interfere in Canadian politics, even though she kind of said it there in terms of calibrating what they're doing. Her office gave a statement saying any suggestion the Premier is asking the U.S. to interfere in Canada's election is offensive and false. So some of the party leaders addressed Smith's comments on the campaign trail today.
I'm wondering if you feel these comments are appropriate.
Are which?
Appropriate.
Well, people are free to make their own comments. I speak for myself.
I think it is shameful. If you break down what Danelle Smith is proposing, she's talking about taking steps to harm the Liberals and to prevent tariffs in a political manner to create a political outcome.
Note all the bobbleheads behind Jagmeet Singh just moving their heads up and down, just like, no, they're going to agree with everything that fool has to say. Well, he's never been the sharpest knife in the drawer, and I can't see how he came to that conclusion over what was said. Consider this. She's not encouraging Donald Trump to do anything. If anything, she's encouraging him to refrain from doing something. There's a big difference there.
The president is waiting for the outcome of the election and see who has a strong mandate from Canadians, or who has a mandate from Canadians. Is it someone who is, to quote Danelle Smith, who's in sync with him, or is it someone who's going to stand up for Canadians?
Or maybe Mark's Carney should be asking, is it someone who will help Donald Trump destroy Canada like, well, him? Because Donald Trump wants to work with Mark's Carney. He wants Mark's Carney to win because he's just more easy to manipulate.
Okay, Danelle Smith, we didn't reach out to her office to invite her on the show today. We never got a response, as she did cancel a public event she was having. Lisa, the plain reading of what she said is calibrate your response throughout the campaign to avoid electing Liberals. And then she suggested in another segment of that interview that Pierre Poilievre would be more in sync with Donald Trump. I mean, what message does that send the Canadians when the First Minister of Alberta is saying things like that on U.S. radio and apparently to the U.S. administration, according to her?
Yeah, and I don't know if I can explain what she said or what she didn't say. This is the way I look at it. I think what she was trying to say, even though I said I'm not going to explain it, but to be generous, I'm going to say that she was probably bringing out the point that what's happening in the United States vis-a-vis tariffs is having an impact on the trajectory and discussion around the Canadian general election. Yep. And she personally thinks it would have been going in a different direction, but for this, and would you stop saying that? I think that's kind of what the thrust of it was. But the weird part is that, let's say that Donald Trump's administration comes out and says, I understand Canada's in the middle of an election and we're going to put pause on all the tariffs right now. We're not moving ahead on April 2. Who takes the credit for that? Melanie Joly takes the credit for that, right? Or Dominic LeBlanc takes the credit for that. If you think about it, right? If there is it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the Conservatives. It helps the Liberals if there is some kind of a pause in how the Americans are dealing with us vis-a-vis the tariffs. So it's one of those comments where I don't know whether or not she was understanding the entirety of the comments that she was making at the moment, because I don't follow through on it being particularly beneficial to the Conservatives. Because if I were in the Liberals, right, I would take a victory lap on being the ones that were able to negotiate that.
Well, she said this in the interview on the 8th of March, Rob. So it was the day before Mark Carney won the leadership. It just took a while to percolate.
Want to tell?
So Lisa right there, she's the Conservative pundit on the panel, and she's not even getting it. She's falling right in line with these far left extremists at the CBC. There's no election interference here. And David Cochrane actually makes a very good point. The election hadn't even started yet. There wasn't even a leader of the Liberal Party that was elected yet. So there was a good possibility that the election would not have even been called until October. This is just a silly point on behalf of the CBC, but it's actually their attempt at election interference. They want to turn the tides against Pierre Poilievre by using what Danelle Smith said against him. It's really ridiculous. What Danelle Smith said was not election interference. What the CBC is trying to do is election interference. Well, let's now turn to the debate debacle that's happening right now. Apparently, there is a private news organization, news network, television network, I don't know, in Montreal who wants to host a French debate with all of the leaders. However, they already have a French debate that is going to occur in Quebec, in Montreal. Now, this private enterprise, this private news organization, they actually want everybody to pay $75,000 to attend this debate. I've never heard of that before. It sounds like maybe they're a fly-by-night organization and they thought, hey, why don't we make a little bit of cash out of this and convince all of the candidates that they should pay us to host them in a debate. But they already have a debate. In fact, there's 2 debates scheduled for Quebec and no debates scheduled for any other province. Yes, you heard that right. Both the French and the English debate, just like in the leadership convention for the Liberals, both debates are going to be held in Montreal on back-to-back nights. So no other province, no other region of Canada is really being represented here. I don't know if you think the same, but I think there's a little bit of one-sidedness happening here. They're already getting 2 debates. Why do they need a third? And why do they need 2 debates in French when the English are only getting 1? This, to me, sounds a little lopsided, but let's go to the CBC report and then we'll talk about it.
Bloc Québécois, their leader, Yves Blanchet, will spend the entirety of his campaign in Quebec, to no surprise, the only province in which the Bloc runs candidates. So if he's prime minister, something crazy happened. Today, he is in Quebec City, where he's questioning the tax cuts promises from both the Liberal and Conservative leaders.
How the hell do you intend to do that? One of the parties says, we will cut the expenses. Okay, is it the right time to cut the expenses when the moment is more appropriate to support enterprise companies and jobs? And the other party says, we will cut expenses and we will cut taxes. There's no way on earth one can manage that.
Blanchet says both the frontrunners need to explain how they'll pay for their tax cut proposals. And the CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian is traveling with the Bloc leader. Rafi.
David, Yves-François Blanchet's struggle is to stay relevant in an election campaign that's so far largely been about who is best placed to take on Donald Trump. Blanchet's pitched today a private members bill that would force the federal government to prioritize domestic providers in federal government contracts.
Well, that's a bit of a distraction. So before we get into talking about the debates, here's the reality of it. There already are rules concerning contracts, concerning buying anything for the federal government, any procurement and any contracts given out. First and foremost, surprise, surprise, it has to be given or offered to either an Indigenous corporation or a corporation from Quebec. And matter of fact, one of the funny little sayings that goes around a lot of government departments is, if it ain't from Quebec, you ain't getting it. So they already have those rules. After they've exhausted all options from Indigenous companies and Quebec, then the rest of Canada can apply, or, they can go and seek contracts or supplies from the rest of Canada. And only then, after they've exhausted that, are they allowed to go outside of Canada. So this is just smoke and mirrors. But let's get back to this report, because they're now going to talk about this debate debacle.
Blanchet is also seizing on the Liberals balking at paying a $75,000 participation fee to take part in a French language debate that would have been held by the French private network TVA, an event that may not happen now. Blanchet says Mark Carney must be afraid of facing off against him and is accusing Carney of robbing him of a platform to connect with Quebecers. Now, Blanchet will still have his chance at the other French language debate, which is scheduled for April 16th. Coincidentally, his birthday, a rare gift for a leader that could be squeezed out of this campaign. David?
Okay, that's the CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian in Quebec City. So look, all of these leaders are going to have a chance to square off in debates. And we got details today on when the leaders' debates will be during this election campaign. The French debate will be held on April 16th and the English debate a day later on April 17th. They will both take place in Montreal. But we also learned today that the Liberal Party will not be participating in a debate that was trying to be organized by the private French language network TVA. Rafi mentioned it there. That debate had a $75,000 price tag. The party had to pay $75,000 to participate. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet is accusing Mark Carney and the Liberals of being scared.
So far, I don't know what he's not afraid of.
this guy is supposed to be strong enough to face Donald Trump, which is one of the biggest threats on democracy and freedom for a long time. I will face the guy. And then we say, hey, come in Quebec and discuss with us because you want us to vote for you. Oh, I won't go. I'm saying to him, hey, let's come and face the music.
So Yves Francois Blanchet there, he's just a character. No matter what you think of his politics, he's actually quite the character. He knows that this is just crap. He knows he's getting his chance to debate Mark's Carney. He's getting that chance. He just wants to push the button. But it also shows how they do feel that they're special, that they should have more than the rest of Canada. And, that's what rubs the rest of Canada the wrong way. Be an equal partner. That would be great. But when you insist on all these extras, that's what kind of pisses the rest of us off. So, no, they shouldn't have a second French debate. Now, I think it's funny that this corporation is trying to squeeze some money out of it. And basically, it's a shakedown. It's a ripoff. But whatever. It is what it is. I mean, they're from Montreal, Quebec. You kind of expect that kind of shadiness out of that area. Now, I like Montreal. I've been there, but they're not known. They are known for a lot of their underhanded and underworld connections and, intrigue and stuff like that. So I wouldn't expect that anywhere else in Canada, any company would try to pull that off. But hey, you know what? It's in Quebec. Let's go back to this report and see what the pundits have to say.
Okay, face the music. Vandana, I'll let you respond to that allegation as the Liberal in the room right now, but I just have to ask Wiley, does anyone ever heard of a debate you were invited to as a political party that you had to pay a cover charge to participate in? $75,000. I've never heard of that, Rob. No. If you organize it, you pay it, right? You host it.
Often in the United States and in other countries as well. Yeah. This debate is sponsored by, in other words, people put up the money, rent a hall, in order to get the politicians to come and tell citizens what they're going to do, how they're going to be governed. Never heard of this before. That being said, it is a disadvantage for Mr. Carney to debate in French. His French is labored. I know other people disagree with me, some others in the punditocracy. The question is whether or not Quebecers care about that. Up until now, all of the evidence that I've seen, all the research I've seen suggests no. Since early 1990s, and yes, I was here in the early 1990s, Quebecers have, in effect, since the collapse of the Meech Lake Accord, they've opted out of federal politics. Large swaths of the province have. And they've decided that they are going to look after their own interest and invest in people who will look after Quebec's interest. Donald Trump has changed a 30-year-old pattern. Okay, Quebecers are not content just to look after their own interest. They're worried about their language. They're worried about their culture. And who is protecting their language and culture right now? A barely bilingual Anglophone, they think, is the one who is going to provide the ring fence around the language and culture of Quebec.
Right.
And the federal system is going to do that. So it's really fascinating for somebody like me who began their career worrying about national unity coming out of Quebec, how that's changed and how Quebecers' votes are shifting as a result of that.
Right. Well, look, I do want to go to Vandana, but we're all clear. No one's ever heard of a debate where you had to pay to play, right? No. Like that just doesn't happen when you're like, okay, all right, because that strikes me as strange.
Yes, it is strange. Let's call it what it is, though. It's an attempted shakedown. And, no party really thought that it would work. Pierre Poilievre agreed to it because he knew that it would never happen. Of course, not all the parties are going to agree to this shakedown, especially not Mark's Carney, and nor should they. It's a ridiculous prospect, but it's also ridiculous that they would even consider having a second French debate in Montreal. So 2 French debates in Montreal plus an English debate in Montreal. what makes Montreal so special or better than the rest of Canada? It's apparently even better or more special than Toronto, a city I'm not overly fond of. I apologize for any viewers who are from Toronto. It just doesn't sit well with me. I've been there and, well, would prefer not to go back. But the other areas of Canada, what about them? The areas of Canada that constantly get ignored. What about the prairies? What about Calgary or Red Deer? Those would be excellent places for a debate because you never have debates there. Remember, these are televised debates and the audiences are relatively small. You can fill up a hall in Red Deer, Alberta with people who would be very interested in going to a debate and seeing it firsthand. What makes them less Canadian than people from Montreal? What about having a debate in Kamloops or Kelowna? What about having a debate in Saskatoon or Regina? What about having a debate somewhere in Newfoundland or New Brunswick or Nova Scotia? They're not even considering that. So they used to have a lot more debates than two. I'm not sure they need more than two, but they used to have more debates than two. But the fact that nowadays you have two debates and they're both in Montreal, that to me just shows a bias. It shows that the political class and the pundit class, the media, they don't care about the West. They probably don't even care that much about the East, but they definitely do not care about the West. They treat us like second-class citizens. And that's why the West feels like they're done. They're done with this whole Canadian phenomena, the experiment that is Canada. They're done with it because they get treated so poorly. They're even less than an afterthought. I don't even think that anybody has considered having a debate in Western Canada. In my mind, that is completely ridiculous, especially considering what's going on right now. Absolutely, there should be a debate in Western Canada where Canadians maybe even should be allowed to ask some questions of the candidates, pose some of the questions, not just a moderator that's paid by the CBC to be nice to the Liberals. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to know what you think. Put your comments down below. And while you're at it, please like this video, share with your friends and on social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and hit that bell notification so you never miss another video. Also, please join me on Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Pacific time for my live stream, where you're invited to join in on the conversation. Finally, if you reside on Vancouver Island and you want to get your firearms license, I happen to teach the required courses. So if you would like to take a course from me, there are links in the description of this video to my website where you can sign up for one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.